ranking! Start the ranking, Jock! What's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and welcome back to another video. So today I'm ranking all 5 Indiana Jones movies from my least favorite to my favorite. This is one of, if not my outright favorite movie franchises of all time. I have a deep love for this character. These movies mean a lot to me, so this is going to be a very, very fun one to get into. I don't think there is a bad Indiana Jones movie. Some just have more issues than the other in my mind. But before I get into this thing, be sure to hit that like button. Comment down below your ranking of the Indiana Jones films. Where does Dial of Destiny place? That's going to be the hot topic with this one for sure. And of course, subscribe and hit that notification bell to help me reach my goal of 80,000 subscribers here on the channel. And also, I just revamped my Patreon, so if you guys want early access to videos like this one, which was actually posted about a week ago on my Patreon, definitely consider joining my Patreon, link down below. You also have access to the Discord server where we're talking about Indiana Jones: The Dial of Destiny right now, as well as a bunch of other movies and shows. Without further ado, let's dive right into this Indiana Jones ranking. So taking the last spot, coming in at number 5 for me right now, is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. This is the movie that just hit theaters this week, and I'll be honest, it's a mixed bag for me as it stands right now. As I sit here filming this, I've only seen the movie one time. I'm going back opening day to watch it again, and I hope to really solidify my thoughts on the film. But I'll say this, I'll start with the things that I really appreciate about the film. I loved the opening sequence. It was incredible, riveting stuff. We got a de-aged Indy, and it really felt like a movie that would have directly followed The Last Crusade in terms of a younger Indiana Jones going on this enthralling adventure, frankly. I was hooked from the opening, and then after that we get to see this older, more seasoned Harrison Ford taking on the role of Indy, and it was interesting to see Indiana Jones in this new stage of life where he's nearing retirement as a professor, and he's not as hopeful as he once was, due to some unforeseen circumstances. He's kind of down and out. So when Helena Shaw, his goddaughter, enters the picture, he goes on this one last adventure. Now, if I'm being completely honest, I felt like this had the weakest main adventure of the 5 films. The actual fact that Indiana Jones was involved, it didn't feel the most necessary, and it seemed like he was sort of shoehorned into this main plot, when in the other 4 films, it feels a lot more personal to him. Helena Shaw as a character is Indy's goddaughter, but her father we only know through an opening scene in this film. So it's not like she's related to Marcus Brody, someone that we know from earlier films in the franchise, or say Sala, one of the best sidekicks in this franchise. She's just introduced in this film, as well as her father, so that relationship doesn't hit as close to home as I wish that it did. It has the classic adventure feel at times. It's got the blaring good Indiana Jones score, but at the same time, I feel like it sort of abandons some of the main necessities or tropes within an Indiana Jones film. Whether that is the big action set pieces that feel practical and grand in scale, those were kind of lacking in my opinion. I felt like just the action sequences in general were pretty tame or underwhelming compared to the other 4 films. And I know Harrison Ford can't do as much physically at his current age, but still, I was underwhelmed with the Tangier chase scene, and even the middle act, like the whole set piece that it took place at was really just bland for an Indiana Jones film. And then my main issue with this movie comes in the 3rd act. I think the movie goes a little bit off the rails, not a little, a lot, at least after one viewing, that's how I feel. And that's something I could soften on over time. Of course, the movie's filled with these emotional, wonderful callbacks to prior films in the franchise. As much joy as I get from seeing Indiana Jones on screen one last time, at the same time, I take issue seriously with the way the 3rd act plays out. Not crazy about that. I felt it was underwhelming in terms of action after the opening sequence. And it's just like, I literally feel torn down the middle. I haven't been this divided on a movie after watching it since The Last Jedi, so it's one that I'm gonna have to watch more and more and really either grow to love, grow to hate, or just stay right in the middle, I guess. But Dial of Destiny, as it stands right now, is my least favorite of the Indiana Jones films. Though I have softened on it a little bit since that initial review, I was just pretty disappointed with this one, unfortunately. Coming in at number 4 for me is the 4th film, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, a movie that most people fully dismiss and just hate. I think it is the most overhated Indy film by a long shot. In fact, if you haven't rewatched this movie in a while and you've kind of just been listening to the online buzz and hatred, give it a rewatch and see how you feel about it today, because this movie captures everything I love about Indiana Jones as a character. It's got some of, if not the best action in the franchise. That's not even a crazy statement. We have some wild jungle chase scenes here that are just enthralling from the start. I even like the opening. Dr. Spalko, played by Cate Blanchett, is a great villain. And I even like Shia LaBeouf as Mutt Williams here. A lot of people take issue with that character. I think that him and Indy have a fantastic chemistry. I love how he's like, "Get on, Gramps!" And then as we later find out in the film, Mutt is actually his son, Marion and Indy's son. And when we as the audience find that out, it allows for a lot more humor between the three of of those characters, making the film have that charm, which was kind of lacking in Dial of Destiny. Of course, this movie does have issues. I'm not blind to those. There's some shoddy CGI at times, and there are decisions that I question. I don't get bothered by them as much as other people, but like Mutt Williams swinging with the monkeys is a little wild, I'm not gonna lie. And of course, the whole nuke fridge scene has become infamous in a way, but those things don't really bother me. Maybe that's because when I first watched this movie I was 8, and I saw it in theaters with my dad, so it's always had a special place in my heart. But even as I rewatch it with age and, you know, the older I get, I don't really get bothered by it as much, because I look at a film like Temple of Doom where they survive falling out of a plane and landing on a raft, and I'm like, they would be toast. So there's multiple moments in pretty much every indie film where it's like, I don't know if I believe them getting out of this scenario alive, so it doesn't really bother me that much here. There's outlandish moments for sure. I don't think it's got the strongest main adventure when compared to like the original trilogy per se, but I'm still really hooked into the story with the Crystal Skull, and even the final act doesn't bother me too much, because aliens, believe in them or not, they seem like they could be based in reality, and it feels like there's probably something out there. There's also been a lot of sci-fi films and just speculation in general among real-life scientists as to whether or not aliens exist or not. So to bring them into Indiana Jones and have that be the supernatural element never really deterred me too much when you look at the supernatural elements in the other 3 films. I didn't mention this when I was talking about Dial, but with Dial of Destiny, I think that's where it goes a little too outlandish. People are bothered by aliens. I am more bothered by the final act of Dial of Destiny. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about, but that's where I take issue, and I'm interested to see how general audiences respond, because the third act of Crystal Skull loses so many people, but I wonder if that's going to reign true for Dial of Destiny. We'll have to see, but overall, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is such a fun movie to me. I go to this one more than most people. I literally rewatch it almost annually, I want to say. Mutt is a great addition to the franchise. I love they bring back Marion. It's got those callbacks, the classic Indy quips, humor, and action scenes. Overall, I enjoy this one. The good far outweighs the bad to me. In fact, I'm a pretty big apologist for this movie and don't find it to be riddled with issues as much as other people. Number 3 on my list is Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. This is the second film in the franchise. It actually takes place a year before Raiders of the Lost Ark in 1935. Raiders takes place in 36. Temple of Doom is without question the darkest movie in this franchise. In fact, when I was growing up, it was actually the last Indiana Jones movie that I ever watched. I think I was 14 years old when I finally watched it. Funnily enough, it was actually after I got my wisdom teeth removed. So I was like, okay, time to watch Temple of Doom now. But I remember going over to my neighbor's house, and they had the original Indiana Jones trilogy on VHS. And I would always pick up the VHS cover of this movie and just stare at it and be like entranced by it in a way. I was like, I gotta watch Temple of Doom. But then my parents and all my, friends who were older at the time, because I had older neighbors and older brother, they were like, oh, that movie, you can't watch it because it's got the heart scene where like the dude gets his heart ripped out. I built that scene up in my head to make it just the most horrific thing put to the screen as a 10-year-old, to the point where like I almost had nightmares about the scene and I hadn't even seen the scene. It had just been described to me. So for whatever reason, I just never committed to watching the movie. When I was 14 years old, I finally watched it. And of course, I had built it up to be this just movie filled with terror. It still is the darkest indie film, but by no means is it unwatchably scary. It's got some intense moments for sure, like the human sacrifice that I just spoke of, and the voodoo stuff, that would have freaked me out when I was younger. But watching it as a 14-year-old and then rewatching it now with age, obviously, it isn't that terrifying. It's still freaky. By far the darkest Indiana Jones film. I have to commend the movie because it's still going to be tied to like my childhood trauma, even though I never watched it. But anyway, let's talk about the movie itself. It opens with the whole Lao She scene, and we get, White Jacket Indiana Jones as he's, taking on Lao She. We get Short Round in this film, who's one of the best, if not the best sidekicks this franchise has to offer. And then of course we got Willie, who in my opinion is the most annoying or irritating love interest in this entire franchise. She constantly irritates me, and that's kind of the point of her character, but it just got to the point of like, okay, please stop yelling. That's really where we're at. Like, Willie's got nothing on Marion, in my opinion. But anyway, Temple of Doom is vastly different than Raiders. Not only with its tone, it's obviously a lot darker of a movie, but Temple of Doom, the main plot, takes a while to get going. In fact, if you rewatch this one, it's about a 2-hour movie, 2 hour and 4 minute, I think, is actual runtime. When you get to about the hour and 10 minute mark is when the movie really picks up. For the first, I'd say 20 minutes, it's that opening, but then in between, there's a long chunk of time where it's essentially meandering. We're setting up the stones and the meaning that they have to this village. We get a lot of just playful scenes with like Willie and Indy, like trying to playfully seduce each other in a way. Or this scene around a table where they're all eating these exotic or bizarre foods. And those are really campy and didn't take me out of the movie, but it's just like, okay, what are we doing here? You can have little moments like this in an Indiana Jones film, but it just really embraced the bizarre, almost wacky nature in this film more so than Raiders. So it's a vast difference if you look at the two movies side by side. Then we actually get, you know, the whole Kali Ma scene with the heart getting ripped out. Indy ends up drinking the blood of Kali and gets possessed, and so it takes a really dark turn. But then you've got about the final 30 minutes, which is nonstop action. You got the whole minecart chase scene, the bridge scene. Prepare to meet Kali in hell. It's honestly enthralling. But it just is a bit of a roller coaster, much like the minecart itself, which I think should be made into a ride at Disney. It's a roller coaster of a movie. You've got a really high start, then you drop down for a bit with this goofy sort of meandering feel. Then you really spike up with the horror elements, and then we just got action to end the movie. So overall, it's a very solid watch. Tonally the darkest, and it works at times. It's really freaky in nature. But if I have to fault this movie, it's the fact that it takes a long time to get to the point, and Willie can be really irritating. It's the weakest of the first three Indiana Jones films, but still one I go to frequently. A very good movie, but when compared to the two I'm about to talk about, it just falls a little bit short. My runner-up is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, the third film in the franchise, and damn near my outright favorite Indiana Jones movie. This has so much to love. From the opening with River Phoenix playing a young Indy as we get this little origin story, it belongs in a museum. One of my favorite scenes, damn near my favorite opening, I'd say, in the entire franchise. And then we've got the great introduction of Sean Connery as Henry Jones Sr. here. The father-son dynamic is unmatched in this movie. It makes for some great humor, but also really just tells this father-son bonding story. Like, this is the ultimate Father's Day movie, I feel. The quest for the Holy Grail is arguably the most personal of any of the main artifacts in this franchise, as Henry Jones Sr. has a Grail diary, and it's essentially been like his life's work to try and track down the Holy Grail. So when Indy gets intertwined with this plot and Nazis, it's very, very personal. And the action in this movie is also some of the best the franchise has to offer, whether that is the boat chase in Venice or the tank scene in the desert. There are some high stakes action sequences here. We also have the return of Sala as a lovable sidekick. Marcus Brody returns. So this is a movie that understands the root of this franchise, and it's like, hey, Temple of Doom went a bit dark there, didn't really have as much of the lovable side characters that we knew from Raiders. Let's bring back what the fans really want to see here, and that's what I feel like Crusade is, a bit of a return to form for the franchise after the dark tone of Temple of Doom. Like, in my mind, Last Crusade is a perfect movie. I don't have any issues with it. The score is incredible, and then the whole final moments where we see Indy having to go through the 3 different tasks to get to the actual Grail where he chooses it, it's great. Only the penitent man will pass. He kneels before God. And then you've got the Word of God. But in Latin, Jehovah starts with an I. The leap of faith, the OG leap of faith, before Into the Spider-Verse, I kid. But that scene where he just sticks his foot out and falls, wonderful. And then, of course, you chose wisely. Arguably the most quotable Indy film, action-packed, has a great father-son story, and they ride off into the sunset at the end. It is a beautiful ending to Indiana Jones as a character. Obviously, we got 2 more films that I'm not mad about, but Last Crusade is perhaps the most rewatchable Indiana Jones film, and it just hits right in the feels every time I watch it. That father-son dynamic is just elite. You can't get anything else like it. It is a special movie, and damn near the best Indiana Jones film, but nothing was ever going to top Raiders of the Lost Ark, which takes the top spot on this list. This is the definitive action-adventure film, I think, of all time. I rewatched it twice in the month of June. I saw it once on the big screen, and then I watched it again to prepare for this ranking and Dial of Destiny. I mean, the opening alone, where they're going after, you know, the fertility idol, and he ends up grabbing it with the iconic scene, that is cinema. I mean, like, for real, that scene alone set us up for this adventure that we would go on where Indiana Jones essentially gets recruited to go stop the Nazis and recover the Ark of the Covenant because they're searching after it as Hitler wants to use it. The movie doesn't miss a beat. It is perfectly paced from beginning to end. It sets up Indy as this lovable character like I mentioned from the get-go. You've got Marion Ravenwood in here as the love interest, and they have a really sweet relationship that forms. They got a past, but they work through it. The Well of Souls is just such an immersive set piece. Belloc as the villain, iconic. I could quote this movie for days. In fact, I usually do end up quoting it somehow. And then you've just got those iconic moments in Raiders. Obviously, where we see the guy twirling a sword and he just pulls out the gun and shoots him. And how could I not mention the truck scene where Indy ends up stealing the truck? It is so well shot, especially for an action scene in the 1980s. It holds up to some of the current best action sequences that we've seen on the big screen or just in film lately. This is a thrill ride of a movie. It's got heart, humor, a beautiful John Williams score that's blaring but at times very soft and emotional, personal even, with the Marion theme. It'll make you laugh, it'll warm your heart, it'll terrify you. I mean, at the end of the movie, we see the wrath of God from the Ark of the Covenant. I watched a behind-the-scenes featurette on that. It is very impressive that they pulled that off in the 80s. And All Around Raiders, like I said, is just the definitive adventure film. It is the one that started this entire franchise. I don't think the franchise has ever reached the height of this film. It's come really close, almost right on par with Last Crusade, but the other films just never recaptured that lightning in a bottle feel that Raiders has. It's the most rewatchable movie damn near ever made, alongside something like Back to the Future, the original Star Wars, and it is the best Indiana Jones film and my favorite. But that's gonna do it for my ranking of all 5 Indiana Jones films. Let me know in the comments down below your ranking, hit that like button. Where does Dial of Destiny place? Let's talk about that. Check out my review linked up above. And of course, subscribe and hit that notification bell if you have not already. I'm trying to reach my goal of 80,000 subscribers here on the channel. It would mean a lot. And join the Patreon community, link down below. Your support goes a long way over there. I'm growing the Discord. We have a blast talking about that. So if you want to come talk Dial of Destiny, I'll have a channel for that. We talk all movies and shows, just life. Check out that. You'll get access to the Discord, extra videos, early access to videos, and of course, live Q&As every week. But thank you all for watching. Stay tuned for more indie content coming very soon. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?